Right now, you're listening from somewhere between possibility and procrastination. Here's the brutal truth. You don't need a miracle to change your life. You need a small, repeatable action you can do today. One tiny decision. 1 minute more than yesterday. And if you do it consistently, it compounds into something you could never have imagined. Welcome to the power of momentum. I want you to picture a simple moment from your own life. A moment when you chose to do just a little more than you thought you could. Maybe it was setting the alarm a few minutes earlier, tying your running shoes and stepping outside, or writing just a paragraph of that story you keep telling yourself you'll finish someday. Moment by moment, you chose to push the tiny edge of your comfort zone. And those tiny edges, when gathered, stacked, and repeated, started to tilt your whole world. Let me tell you a story about Lena. Lena cleaned hotel rooms for years, moving from one corridor to the next, keeping a friendly smile ready for guests who never knew how tired she was. Lena wasn't chasing some grand dream in a distant city. She was chasing today's possibility. The possibility of a little more energy, a little more control, a little more dignity in her own routine. One night after her shift, she decided to add 1 extra minute to her nightly cleaning routine, not to her entire life. Just 1 extra minute in that last room. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like a hinge. The next week, she added another minute, then another. She started walking outside for 5 minutes before bed, just to clear her head. And slowly, the world around her began to shift. Her legs felt lighter, her mind less crowded with worry. She found herself arriving early to her shifts with a plan, rather than dragging herself through the day. Lena didn't change the world in a single grand gesture. She changed her world by stacking tiny, repeatable actions. Now, let me tell you about Omar. Omar worked a steady job in a dim office, the kind of job many folks would call stable, yet he felt something missing. Purpose, speed, momentum. He didn't quit his job and leap into a startup. He started with a 15-minute coding session every evening after dinner. He chose a project he cared about, a small app that could help his local community manage volunteer schedules. He treated those 15 minutes as sacred time. Some evenings, life crowded in. Kids, errands, fatigue, but he showed up anyway, even if the screen glowed with nothing but a blank editor. Over weeks, that 15 minutes stretched into 30, then 60. He learned to debug faster, to think in systems rather than patches, to see patterns where before there were only problems. A year later, the app found a modest audience, enough to convince him to keep going, enough to demonstrate to himself that he could turn consistency into progress, even when the results weren't dramatic at first. Omar didn't wait for a perfect plan. He built one with patience, curiosity, and the stubborn refusal to quit on a good idea simply because it was inconvenient. Stories like Lena's and Omar's are not about genius or luck. They're about the math of small, repeatable actions. The math is forgiving. It says if you do something, no matter how small, today, you gain one thing you didn't have yesterday: momentum. Momentum isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or a chart-topping breakthrough. It whispers in your ear, a quiet reminder that you are capable of more than the voice telling you, not now. Here's the second truth. Momentum compounds faster than you think, because your brain loves patterns. When you show up for a minute more than yesterday, your brain learns a pattern. This is my way of handling this. Your brain adjusts your energy, your attention, and your mood to align with that pattern. It's not magic, it's biology. The brain rewiring itself for consistency. Let me give you a real-world example you can borrow for yourself. A young teacher named Priya found herself overwhelmed at the start of every school year. The calendar looked like an avalanche of papers, meetings, parent calls, and planning outlines. She decided to adopt a tiny daily ritual, 5 minutes at the end of each school day, to plan tomorrow's lesson and organize her desk. 5 minutes. Nothing grand. She did it for 2 weeks, then 4, then a month. The effect wasn't immediately obvious in the classroom's chaos, but the pattern began to shift her mornings. Priya walked into the next day with a plan in hand, a lighter heart, and a sense of control she hadn't felt in years. Students picked up on the calm, and gradually behavior and engagement improved. The small ritual catalyzed a larger change because it created a predictable sequence in the midst of unpredictable days. Momentum doesn't just improve outcomes, it changes your identity. The person who shows up for 1 extra minute today becomes the person who shows up a little earlier tomorrow, who finds a better way, who asks for help when needed, who says yes to the hard thing because she's built evidence that she can handle tough paths. When you accumulate tiny wins, you begin to see yourself differently. You stop treating yourself as someone who procrastinates and starts treating yourself as someone who acts, who learns, who adapts. Let's talk about fear for a moment, because fear is the loudest antagonist in this story. Fear says, you'll fail again if you try. Fear says, you don't have the time. Fear says, you're too behind already. Fear is right about one thing: you can be behind. It's a fair point. But fear forgets a crucial detail. Being behind is just a moment in time, not a verdict on your life. The antidote to fear isn't retreat, it's action. Consistently choosing the smallest possible action that moves you forward in the direction you want to go. When you act anyway, fear recedes. It doesn't disappear. It becomes smaller because you've made a new pattern that strengthens you. I want you to try something right now. Imagine a goal that matters to you. Could be health, career, art, relationships, anything. Now think of the tiniest action that would move you toward that goal. It might be one sentence you draft, one page you read, one phone call you make, 1 minute of stretching. That action doesn't promise an instant miracle, but it promises a day that's a little more intact, a little less overwhelmed, a little more in control. Do that thing tomorrow, and then the next day, and the day after. If you do it for 7 days in a row, you'll start to notice a pattern. If you do it for 21 days, you'll notice a change in how you feel about your own potential. If you keep going for 90 days, you'll surprise yourself with what becomes possible without you fully realizing when the change started. Let me tell you about a different kind of story, one that isn't about monumental triumphs, but about steadfast consistency. It's the story of a retiree named June, who decided to repair her body after years of neglect. Rather than promising herself she'd run a marathon, she started with a single stretch each morning. Then she added one push-up, then a short walk around the block. Over 6 months, June didn't become a marathon runner, but she did reclaim stairs she hadn't climbed in a decade. She found energy she hadn't felt since her 30s. She started planning weekend adventures with her grandchildren, something she'd stopped doing as back pain crept closer. The transformation wasn't flashy, but it was powerful because it was possible to maintain. And that's what makes momentum so valuable. It's sustainable. We've talked about individual tiny steps, but there's another trick that multiplies their impact: habit stacking. Habit stacking is taking a routine you already do and attaching a new tiny action to it, so your brain doesn't have to create a new cue from scratch. For example, if you already brush your teeth every morning, you could add 1 minute of breathing exercises right afterward, or you could write one line in a journal. The cue, brushing your teeth, remains the anchor, and the new action rides along with it. The key is to choose something that requires almost no extra decision, so you rarely slip into, "I'll start tomorrow." The simplest rule I've learned and seen work again and again: attach a tiny action to a reliable habit. Do not rely on motivation. Rely on structure. You'll encounter setbacks, and that's not a sign that you're failing. It's proof that you're trying. The trick is how you respond when the setback shows up. You can let it derail you, or you can treat it as data. You can ask, what small adjustment would make this easier tomorrow? Did you pick a time that doesn't work with your energy levels? Do you need a lighter goal that still moves you forward? The difference between people who succeed and those who don't isn't their willpower, it's their willingness to learn from their missteps and adjust without guilt. Let me share one more narrative to anchor this idea. A young artist named Theo wanted to turn his passion into a practice and, eventually, a living. He didn't aim to paint a masterpiece every day. He committed to painting for 10 minutes each morning before breakfast, and posting a tiny draft version of his work online every Sunday. No perfection required, just visibility. The 10-minute window became a ritual that grew more meaningful as the weeks passed. People started commenting on little improvements, and Theo started hearing from mentors who encouraged him to keep going. The cumulative effect wasn't immediate fame, it was a constant, quiet improvement that kept him moving forward through doubt. 1 year later, his work had become a daily habit, and gradually a small community formed around his practice. He didn't need a breakthrough to begin. He needed a rhythm that could outlast his fear. So, what's your rhythm? What is the smallest thing you can do that, if done every day, would move you toward your bigger dream? It could be as simple as 1 sentence a night for a writer, 5 minutes of practice for a musician, 10 minutes of reading for someone wanting to learn a new skill, or one call to reconnect with a mentor, friend, or potential collaborator. Write it down. Put it in your calendar. Make it visible. Make it easier for yourself to do than to resist. And here's the final ingredient: accountability. You don't have to reveal all your dreams to the world to benefit from accountability. You can start with yourself. Track your tiny wins. A simple notebook, a note in your phone, a sticker on the calendar, whatever you need to see that you did what you promised yourself you'd do. When you see progress, you reinforce the identity you're building, the person who acts, who learns, who adjusts, who continues. The power you've asked for isn't a revelation coming from outside you. It's a decision you make inside you every day. It's the choice to show up, to be a little braver than you were yesterday, to treat your life as an unfinished manuscript that you keep editing with small, patient strokes. The people who achieve lasting change aren't the ones who waited for a sign. They're the ones who created their own signs through tiny, reliable actions. If you're listening to this and thinking, "That sounds nice, but it's not enough for me," I want you to try this in the next 24 hours. Name your one smallest possible action toward your goal and commit to doing it twice, today and tomorrow. Then tell someone you trust what you're trying to do and ask them to check in with you in a week. You don't need permission to begin. You just need to begin and keep going. Before we wrap, a quick reminder. You are capable of consistent progress even if today feels heavy. Momentum is not a myth. It is a practical, observable force that travels with you when you choose to carry it. The tiny steps you take today are not wasted. They're the bricks of your future you're laying one at a time. The person you want to be, a person who persists, who learns, who grows, begins with one small, doable action and a decision to return to it again and again. Now it's your turn. What is your one tiny action for the next 7 days? How will you attach it to something you already do every day so you don't have to rely on willpower alone? Write it down, say it aloud, and commit to it with me. If you're comfortable, share it in the comments below so we can cheer you on and hold space for your progress. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing for more stories like these. Stories about people who chose the small, consistent steps that turned into real-life breakthroughs. Like this video if you're ready to build momentum, and share it with someone who might need a gentle nudge toward the next right action. Remember Lena's minute, Omar's evenings, Priya's end-of-day ritual, June's morning stretch, Theo's 10-minute practice. The common thread running through all of them isn't extraordinary talent. It's unwavering, repeatable action. It's choosing to start again tomorrow, even if today didn't go perfectly. It's choosing to reset, recommit, and move forward because you've learned that progress, not perfection, is enough to transform a life. So take a breath. Decide what your first tiny step will be. Set the clock, lift your eyes from the screen for a moment, and choose one action you can do now and again tomorrow. This is how you build momentum. One small decision at a time, day after day, until your life looks back and realizes you're not the same person who started this journey. You're the person who kept showing up, who believed a little more, who created a life out of the steady climb rather than the sudden sprint. You deserve that life. You deserve to see what happens when you commit to the small, consistent actions that compound into something magnificent. Start today. Start right now. And I'll be here with you, every step of the way.